Okay, next we're going to look at how to access data from a data frame. Okay, there are many different ways in which you can access. You can access columns, you can access rows, or you can access particular items in the data frame. And we need to be able to do that to manipulate data. So in case, if there are errors in the data, we want to be able to clean up the errors. And if we want to modify the data into, say, the logarithm or exponential, or maybe make it into classifications. So those kinds of manipulations, to do those kinds of manipulations, we need to be able to access data. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to first look at how to access columns. So we have various columns in the data frame. So with dot column name, that's one way of accessing, okay? And that will work only if the name is a valid Python name. So what do we mean by that? So let's look at this example. So we have 3 pandas series. Okay, so now we have converted that into a data frame. Okay, so we created a dictionary. We did this last time, I think. Okay, so here we have state, that is object type, census year, that's our format of %y. That's the code that didn't work properly last time. So if you do a df5 info, okay, so see, state is object, which is string, census year is date time object, and population or pop is a floating point number. Okay. Now, one way of accessing a particular column is by simply putting a dot and then the name of the column. Okay. Like you can do it like this. Okay, so you say df5 dot, and then you press the tab key. Well, yeah, there you go. So it'll bring up all the options. So now if you start typing, then you see state there. Now that would work. Okay, this worked because it is a valid Python name. Okay, remember way back we talked about valid names. It has to start with an underscore or a letter of the alphabet. It cannot start with a number. It cannot start with a special character. You cannot have spaces between inside the name, like census year. Okay, census year is not a valid pandas object name because there is a space in between. Okay, so the dot method will not work. So if you do df5 census year, so it's going to think that there is something called df5 census, and then there is something else called year, and both are not true. So it's going to give you an error. Okay, so it's invalid. Right? So how do you access a name that is not a valid Python object name? So that's where the square bracket convention is used, where you put a square bracket and then enter the name of the column within quotation mark. So then you will be able to access. So there are 2 ways to access a column. Dot name of the column, that will work if the name is a valid Python name. Otherwise, you have to use this method. Okay? Okay, so there you go. To access rows, we need to use dot lock or dot ilock. Okay, but we're going to discuss that a little bit later. Okay, let's look at adding new columns. How do you add columns into a data frame that's already there? Okay, so here we want to add, okay, so there is already df1. Okay, let's look at what is, well, I should really run the whole thing first. Okay, so run all above. So just go ahead and run all the cells above, so you'll have access to the data frames that we've already created. Okay, so let's see, df1. Okay, so df1 is this. It's the same data frame, but it has a different row indexes. Okay, and also the column name here is different, and the data types are not changed. So we're going back to the first data frame. Now we want to add a new column to this data frame that already exists. So how do we do it? So one way of doing it, so if you have a list, so adding a list as a column. Add a list, so you have a list here, and you want to add that list, then all you have to do is to say df1, and then put the new name, okay, like that, and set the list to it. So you have a list, and then you put that list into the given new name, and put it in, and it's going to insert it. Okay, so this is, if you have a list, you just put it into a new column name, and that's it. So you get new one column has been added with that data. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Then if you have a column of NumPy array, so like here, ARR1 is a NumPy array of 6 numbers. Okay, you can do the same thing exactly like a list. So instead of setting a new column to a list, now you're setting it to a NumPy array. So, oh, I didn't run this one. I have to run that first. So now the NumPy array has been added as a new column. So notice that we didn't give indexes, row indexes. Okay, row indexes are only for data frame and series. Okay, this is list. List doesn't have index, and NumPy array, it doesn't have index. It has implicit index, but it doesn't have explicit index. So you'll just add it. You need to have exactly the same number of data points, okay, and then it'll insert it into the existing data frame. All right, so that's adding a list in as a column, add a NumPy array as a column. Now add a pandas series into a data frame as a new column. Okay, so now we have a series that has index. Series has index, data frame has index. Now it's going to match up the indexes and then insert it. So here we're going to create a new series, and it has only 3 numbers, but it has index. Okay, so we have 10, 30, and 70 as the index, right? So here it is. So length need not be the same now, unlike before. Before there was no index, so the length had to be the same. So it'll just put it in, from the first position to the last position. But now series has index, so it need not be the same size. It's going to match up the indexes and then insert. So if an index in the series is not present, it is ignored. If an index is in the data frame is not present in the series, then it's going to insert a NaN value. So here, so that's the new series that we have created. This is the existing data frame, right? The existing data frame has 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 as indexes, okay? Now series 1, you're going to match up, okay? So there is 10, 30, So you can find a match there. 10, 10, match that. 30, 30, you match that. Okay. 70 is in the series, but it is not in the data frame. So there is no place for it to go into the data frame. So that's thrown out. Okay. The indexes that are present in the data frame but not in the series, they are left blank, or NaN. So if you add that, okay, so now we add the series, and you see 70 is left out, is thrown out. Okay, you have -3 and -4, the rest of them are NaN. So that's how, when you add a series into a data frame as a new column, this is what will happen. Okay?